You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in William Forero, Associate Attorney at Prior Law in City Island in the Bronx, New York. How are you?
Hey, Benny, how are you? Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Looking forward to talking.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for joining us. So we featured you in early March.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome to get you on the Lawyer Stories feed, lawyer_stories on Instagram and on Facebook as well. So just tell us a little about yourself. Like, where are you from?
So I grew up in Mineola on Long Island.
Okay.
After that, I went to college at a little college in South Central Pennsylvania called York, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
The school was called York College. I actually got recruited to wrestle there.
No kidding.
So I did about 1 year of wrestling, and then after that, I hung it up. I retired.
You retired, huh?
Yeah, it was 1 year was enough for me. So I liked the school enough and the people that I met there, though, that I stayed, even though I stopped wrestling.
Okay. So you didn't get into like WrestleMania or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Fortunately not. Yeah,
all right. So, well, yeah. Hey, that's pretty cool though, to go to school and pick up a sport, like continue the sport that you want to do, like see it through, until you feel like you're done with it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that you did that, actually.
When I was in high school, I didn't really have any interest in going to college at all. And my mom was like, if you could wrestle in college, would you go to college? And I said, yeah, if I can wrestle in college, I'll go to college. So she drove me around to all the D3 schools in the area, and
Wow.
finally found one that, recruited me. They were the only one that really actively recruited me. So that's the one that I went to.
That's awesome. That's a good woman. Find what you want to do. Find what you like to do. That's perfect. So like at what moment, you said you didn't even want to go to college. So then at what moment were you like, I'm going to go to law school?
Well, towards the end of college, I had an internship at the DA's office in York. And, that was interesting to me. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe I'll try to be a paralegal after college. And so I got a paralegal certificate, and I got a job at a infant lead paint poisoning firm as a paralegal.
Wow. Okay. What was that like?
So the firm that I worked at, they only took extremely high value cases. So we're talking stuff that they assessed at 7 figures. And this is for people who had children that were very severely affected with their mental capacity because of their exposure to lead paint.
Right.
And so apparently lead paint gives off a sweet taste, so that children who are crawling around on the floor, if paint is chipping off the walls, will pick it up and put it in their mouth. And that's kind of what happened a lot. I think it's luckily been curtailed, and the landlords in the city are doing a little bit of a better job with that respect. So I don't think those litigations are as prevalent anymore. But after working with the attorneys at that firm, I thought to myself, you know what, I want to be the attorney. I don't want to be the paralegal. Kind of like I want to do what they're doing.
Okay. So you were like, okay, you just didn't want to be doing that. Like you wanted to be a different level. You wanted to go to law school. You were interested enough in the practice that you wanted to do it as a lawyer. Yeah,
for sure. And funny enough, I was just talking to one of the attorneys that I worked with there earlier today. And so I ended up getting let go from that firm because just the way that the business was developing, what I got hired to do turned out not to be viable. So I was really disappointed to be let go. But about a week later, I got my acceptance from St. John's, and they told me that they'd be giving me a full ride to go there. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, getting let go wasn't too upsetting after that.
Do you think you would have still gone if you didn't get let go?
I think I still would have went, but it just had really good timing,
Wow, a full ride like that right there is I don't mean to sort of put emphasis on it, but I think it is that's a huge deal, because a lot of people just have this crushing debt when they get out of law school, and it's like they're paying 2 rents or 2 mortgages for
right.
30 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm telling people who are looking when they're looking at law schools. I said, put in an application at some of the smaller schools that you might see as a tier below you. And, the difference between paying 60 grand a year and having a full ride, that could sway your decision.
No, I think that's great advice to tell anybody.
It makes your post law school options. It kind of broadens your options as well, because you're not, beholden to paying back those loans.
Can I ask what it was about St. John? Did you have a high LSAT? Did they just want you to come in? Like, what was it that really...
I think that they valued the experience.
Okay.
So the fact that I had been a paralegal for a year, I did well on the LSAT, but I had a very average GPA from a small school that wasn't very prestigious. So I think they did put emphasis on that real life experience working at a law firm.
Okay, so no wrestling at law school, like you were done with that your first year of college. So like, what was your law school experience like, would you say, at St. John's?
It was a lot more enjoyable than I ever expected it to be.
Okay.
Just because that I made a lot of really good friends that I still see often. And, some of them have kind of spread out into kind of small law firm practice now. So we reach out to one another fairly often to, bounce ideas off one another, kind of share theories and strategize and stuff, which has made working a lot more enjoyable as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So what was like your favorite thing about law school besides, making a good group of friends? You hear that it's kind of law school's a smaller place. I kind of look at it like a high school, in a way, like the size of it. But what would you say like your favorite thing was about going to law school?
So I mean, I'm probably in the minority here, but what I liked about it was that, you had the one test at the end of the semester and they kind of left you alone during the semester. I did very badly when it came to, in high school, when you had to do the worksheet every night and turn it in for credit. If I'm just left to my own devices and told, try to do well at the end of the semester, that's kind of when I do my best.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's awesome.
They kind of let me do, study my own way. They gave me guidance and then kind of just, let me go.
Were you cramming at the end, or did you keep up with everything?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I took my weekends off when my non-law school friends were, doing fun stuff as much as I could. And then tried to catch up later on.
Yep, makes sense. So like you said, you had in your story, or I know you sent me sort of a longer version of the story, but you talked about a 3L internship that you had with like an insurance defense company. Like, tell us how you got that and like what happened with that.
I worked for an insurance company as an intern. I won't say who, no free ads, right? And it was just so much not fun. It was, everybody kind of had their own job on the conveyor belt, and you kind of just pushed cases along and you showed up every day, and the interns did the same. They executed the same task every day.
Really?
On different cases. So
like what? What would
it was threshold motions. So in New York, a defense company or a defense firm can make a motion saying that summary judgment should be granted in their favor because the plaintiff doesn't have injuries that are sufficient enough to exceed the threshold to be considered a serious injury under New York law. And so a lot of times the motion's a strategic one rather than, one that they anticipate winning. It's just to make the plaintiff's attorneys do some more work, maybe squeeze them a little bit to accept that settlement offer.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, and talking to the other attorneys there, a lot of them would say to me, they would say, well, what do you really want to do? And trying to be a good intern, I would say, what do you mean? I want to work here.
Yeah, right. That's the answer.
This place is great.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you don't want to work here. What do you actually want to do?
Okay. So were these younger attorneys talking to you, or like older?
It was both. It was both people who, and really what it was is I wanted to be on the plaintiff side. I had that experience as a paralegal, and I really wanted to be that personal injury attorney on the plaintiff side.
So did you make with other attorneys asking you that question, did you end up with like a mentor there, or somebody that you kept in touch with who kind of helped you along?
Not quite.
Okay.
I mean, the career counselors introduced me to somebody who took me to lunch, and we talked about what being a personal injury attorney plaintiffs was like. And, a lot of people thought that they would say the plaintiffs firms want a more experienced attorney. They don't want to take a brand new, JD who hasn't been admitted yet. And, that was a little bit disappointing to hear, but I still applied to the jobs for the plaintiff
side.
Yeah, man,
you got to start somewhere. It's that old thing where you always see these ads for like have to have 3 to 5 years experience. It's like, well, how do I get that if I can't even get in and get 1 year? I mean, not everybody can get in or goes to these like enormous law firms.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't really want to suffer through the 2 years of the defense work in order to, get my opportunity on the plaintiff side. So, when I saw that Ted Pryor was advertising for Pryor Law for a fresh out of law school candidate, I was all over it.
That's amazing. So before you get to Ted Pryor, tell us, or I'm sorry, Edmund, right?
Yeah, Edmund, and he goes by Ted. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
He uses a lot of people.
Okay, gotcha. So what advice, like from that experience at that insurance defense firm, like what advice can you give somebody who like doesn't necessarily like their law job? Because a lot of people will just do it to do it. They're just in the grind. So give us some advice.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's a lot of different career options, and it's not, one dimensional, the practice of law. And you kind of gotta just try things out to determine whether you like them.
Excuse me.
And
yeah,
because especially at, I felt at law school, they were pushing you towards the big law side, right?
Yeah.
They want you to go make $1 million a year and be a good donor back to them, or they want the stats or whatever it is.
Right.
So I would just say, you got to try different things out. If you go into law school thinking, I like criminal law and trust and estates and personal injury, try all three out, do the best you can to work in different areas.
So is that the advice you'd give to law students? What would be your like peak advice that you would give to a law student trying to figure out what they want to do?
I would say, don't worry too much about the emphasis that they put on being, the school puts on being in the top 5% and making law review and being a, holding an executive board position on moot court. Those things are great and they're great for the resume. But, if you don't like what you do, then, to me, I would never want to do that. I'm so happy doing what I do now.
Yeah.
I'm glad that, the journal that I was on and the extracurriculars I did are kind of irrelevant for me now.
Right. They seem like a big deal then, but then they become sort of irrelevant, I think. Right.
Yeah. And I know you've had Bob Simon on, his advice is don't do law review.
Well, that's funny you say that because right when you said that, like 30 seconds ago, I totally was thinking of Bob and how he was like, that's just a waste of time. Don't do any of it,
I started following him on a lot of different things, and I agree with his philosophy there.
Okay. Did you see him so you saw him on the podcast?
Yeah, for sure.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's a great attorney. Happy to connect you with him. He just had an amazing CLE called the Bourbon Approved Tour, and it looked phenomenal.
He has a lot of fun too. So
yeah, I knew a lot of people,
attorneys who are having fun. And
I knew some people who went out there, and it was just a cool way to get a CLE. You know, it looked like a good time.
For sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And by the way, like while we're on that topic, like I'm happy to connect you with anybody you see that I know on Lawyer Stories. Do like a a warm intro. If there's somebody you see that I might know, happy to do it. That's what I want to do here, is connect people and build that network. So it's my pleasure to do that. So when you were at the something I found interesting about your like longer story, and then we'll get into what you're doing now, but you said you like were the best applicant on paper for one of these jobs, and like you did the job. Like what happened with that? Like, so tell us, you could be the best applicant. Was it the best applicant on paper? And then you interviewed and you were like, well, I just don't think they like me. Like, what do you think?
What happened was they had on-campus interviews. It was an insurance defense firm. And they might have had 8 interviews, 10 interviews. And I interviewed with them. And, afterwards I had a meeting with the career counselor, and she was like, well, they really liked your resume. They thought you were like the best candidate here on paper, but like we think you're, maybe you need to work on your interviewing skills a little bit. And I was like, oh man, I think they just like didn't like my personality. I say that as a joke, but sometimes you interview with these firms, and every question they ask you is a bit of a little puzzle or a little game, like what's your greatest weakness, or, and I'm not very good at playing those little games. And, I probably answered the questions a little too honestly. And
okay. So when they asked you what your greatest weakness was, you didn't say, well, my greatest weakness is that I don't have as much experience as the other attorneys with 8 years experience. Right. Stuff like that. Right.
Yeah. But, in hindsight, it was a blessing in disguise, because, if I had gotten that job offer, I might've taken it and I wouldn't have ended up where I am now. So,
yeah, well, you definitely have a lot of, you do have a lot of confidence, you could tell, and you need it you went into a smaller firm, with Mr. Pryor. How did you find that job?
So he advertised in the school's like internal job registry.
Okay.
So, and I went for the interview, and I didn't even know that City Island was a place that existed at that point.
Right. So, where were you living at the time?
In Mineola on Long Island.
Okay, in Long Island. Okay.
So it's very close. you could get back and forth in 30-45 minutes. I just never had any reason to go there, so I didn't know, what it was. And City Island is a little 1.5 mile long island that's sitting in the Sound, north of Long Island.
Okay, so you went there, and you talked about also that you had to sort of build a book of business. So tell us, first of all, like, what is a book of business? I mean, I think most people know, but like, what does that mean for a new attorney who's coming in?
Yeah, so when I got the job offer, the base salary was a little lower than what I was looking for. And, he said to me, well, I'll pay you a percentage of the cases that you're able to bring in. And in my mind, I was like, I'm fresh out of law school. I'm not even admitted to practice law yet. How am I going to bring in new work? How am I going to get people to sign up with me? And so I decided to take the risk. I thought, I'll figure it out down the line. I want to be on the plaintiff side. I do not want to be on the defense side. I don't want to spend 2 years of my life preparing to go plaintiff. I just want to do it right away.
Yeah.
So, I decided to take the risk, and it's worked out very well for me.
So it's been okay. Like you've been building that. And like, so tell me, why are you such a proponent of the smaller law firm versus working big law?
I think that, I know I say, if you're working in government or insurance defense or something like that, and you're unhappy, branch out and try the small law firm stuff. I mean, if you love working in the DA's office, then obviously that's bad advice, right? Like don't try something else. But if you're unhappy, try the small law firm route, because I don't think that my personality and a lot of people that I'm friends with personalities would have done well at these large law firms. And it's just, to me, it's exactly what I think being a lawyer is. and what I wanted to do with my lawyering. I wanted to be in court. I wanted to meet with clients. I wanted to argue motions, do depositions. I didn't want to just be researching and writing for other people to do that.
So have you gone to court a lot?
Oh yeah, I'm in court all the time. Not so much now, but.
So William, give me some advice for a new attorney going to court.
This is something that I could have used when I first started going, because Ted was like, you just go to court. It's fine. You'll figure it out. And I was like, yeah, but like, how do you do that? I mean, I think that if you're going to the court for the first time, or, you're in a new courthouse or something like that, the best advice is just to be friendly and, ask the court attorneys, oh, can you tell me, where this courtroom is? Or, when you show up and there's a court attorney standing, by the door, then you can ask them, oh, what's the protocol here? Like, what am I supposed to do? This is my first time appearing in this part. Could you tell me, how the judge likes people to act? Because sometimes they say, just sit down and wait for your case to get called. And other times they're like, well, you have to fill out a form and then turn in the form, and then the judge will call you. And you don't know which one's which, you could end up sitting there for a while and not really knowing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, because you didn't fill out the form or whatnot, right?
Yeah,
and the clerk just doesn't know you're there.
And it's okay to be yelled at a little bit. Every once in a while, you might get a cranky judge who doesn't like the fact that you've never appeared there before, and you don't know what the protocols are, and you might have an annoyed judge, and that's okay. That's part of practice. That's part of life, and it's doesn't take away from your worth because you got an annoyed judge being a little cranky at you.
All right. Well, I think that's very helpful advice for new attorneys. So thanks for sharing that. So you are at Bronx Attorney on Instagram.
And Twitter.
What's that?
And Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, do you think there's advice for somebody working at a small firm versus working at like a bigger firm, or like maybe the insurance defense firm size you were at? Like, is there sort of a way in the culture that you have to act differently at a smaller firm, would you say?
I'm really not sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot of internal politics at the larger firms. I mean,
okay.
I've kind of segued away from that now, so I can't really speak on it. Whereas with the smaller firm, I mean, me and the guys I work with, we're yelling at each other all the time. It's kind of become a more familial environment. Whereas maybe, when you're at a larger firm, that's not a proper etiquette to a way to behave.
So it's okay. So it's a little more, not
a little bit more easygoing.
Yeah,
a little bit more comfortable with one another.
Gotcha. So like, there are a lot of personal injury attorneys out there. Like, how do you market yourself differently than other lawyers?
So that's actually, the best benefit that I got from the pandemic. We went home for, being a smaller firm, and we didn't have to commute on subways and go to buildings that have 10,000 people in them. So, our staying at home was a little bit shorter than others because we only had to interact with, a couple other people. But when I was staying at home, our business kind of shut down completely. With the personal injury, the courts closed almost entirely, and a lot of the defense companies were unwilling to negotiate the cases that were currently, in limbo, and weren't exchanging discovery, and it was hard to push the cases along.
Yeah.
So, I thought to myself, how do I use this time to try to, think about, what I want, the next couple of years to look like for me, and how I'm going to find business for myself, and how I'm going to really, establish myself in a crowded marketplace.
Right.
And so I just did digging online, trying to find anything, any type of media that could help me. And I found a lawyer.
Boom. Lawyers,
yeah,
here we go.
For sure.
Here you go.
You went a little bit further down the rabbit hole for me. I didn't find
Okay.
you
Well, we
until
got
a
to work
couple
on
months
getting
later.
higher up on that rabbit hole.
Yeah, keep climbing those podcast charts. Hopefully this one's gets a lot of hits. And
I would love to climb that podcast chart, but this podcast is about you, my friend. So
yeah, so
go ahead.
I read the Lawyerist book,
Yep.
and tried to kind of use the worksheets that they offer on their website to kind of just think out how I was going to approach everything going forward. And I found a book by an attorney in Albany named John Fisher, called The Power of a System and the Law Firm of Your Dreams. And I just tried to consume as much from successful people as I could.
Smart.
To try to just, steal as much as they're willing to give me. And so, I do things like, I hand out pens to everybody I see. I give people bottle openers. I do stuff that's, sometimes a little corny. When I got admitted to practice in New Jersey, I had a friend make me a graphic that had pork roll on it. And, because
it had what on it?
Pork roll. Do you know what pork roll is? It's a New Jersey delicacy. It's like a
yeah, okay, food.
It's a circular breakfast meat.
It sounds good. I could probably go for it right now.
Yeah, and I try to make sure that everybody knows, what I'm doing and what I practice in, because you never want someone to say, oh, I didn't know that you practice personal injury. If I had known that, I would have told my aunt to call you. And
right.
You really want to avoid that. So that's what like the intention of the giveaways are. I put my name on anything I can, as long as with personal injury attorney. Another thing that I have is I made T-shirts.
Oh, I love a good T-shirt, man. Let's see it. That's dope.
We got this one. It's got a spaceship on it, and it says "Legal Service that's out of this world."
Hold that up. Hold it up. Very nice. Did you design that?
So I had somebody design it for me.
Cool.
But I love band T-shirts when I was growing up.
What bands?
Oh man, lots of kind of indie bands.
Okay.
Of course, like the Blink-182, Sum 41, Newfound Glory.
Okay.
And a bunch of smaller stuff.
Okay.
From the New York, New Jersey area. With the Punches, Crucial Dudes was a big one. Not stuff that a lot of people have heard about, but.
Gotcha.
I was never in a band. I never had my own band T-shirt. So
nice.
The lawyer T-shirts are the next best thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we actually have a store too on Shopify. So if you ever want to check that out.
All right. Maybe we'll have to trade T-shirts then.
Yeah, man. So that's awesome. Yeah. So how long were you practicing before the pandemic hit?
Oh man. So it was a little under a year.
Yeah.
So I got admitted to practice in February of 19 and then March of 20. So I guess it was a little bit more than a year.
So then you did all those things where you started to figure out how to market yourself. You read books, you went online.
Yeah. And, more than anything, I think it kind of just changed my mindset about how I wanted to approach it. My career, instead of just approaching it as, waking up in the morning and trying to get my work done for the day and go home. Now it's whenever I listen to the podcast, I read the books, and I start thinking, how can I do this better? How can I do that better?
I think that's awesome. I think that's such a driven and good way to and beneficial way to think about how you could always like better yourself and put yourself out there. Totally respect that.
Thank you.
So like we talked a lot about being plaintiff side personal injury. Like that's sort of where you're at a small firm in the Bronx, and you're doing good things. You've sort of made it yourself. You're building a book of business, young attorney. One thing I'm really curious about is election law. You're doing some election law, right?
Yeah. So we have a bit of a.
So tell me, first of all, tell us like what election law is, and then go ahead, like, and just. Explain.
Yeah. So about, 2 years ago, a little bit before the pandemic, we started working with an attorney who's been practicing in politics and election law for, 50 years. And
wow.
The person that he was working with as, kind of like his office who had the computers and the printers, and, he works out of his car. So
right.
So we became his office then, and we kind of got thrust into election law. And so there's a lot of legal requirements that you have to fulfill. There's a substantial petitioning process in New York, where you have to collect signatures. And
so what kind of elections are these though? Like, we're not talking Bush v. Gore, right? Like, we're talking like,
oh, it's all, we represent Congress members or people running for Congress, assembly members, city council in Manhattan and the Bronx and Staten Island and all over the city, really.
That's amazing. Was that a big part of Ferero's practice? Forero. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's me. No, so it wasn't
that's
part
you.
of,
No. I meant to say
Ted Pryor.
Was that part of his practice before you got in there?
So not a substantial portion. It was really this other attorney we started working with named Stanley Schlein. He brought that book of business in, and there's a lot of very strict deadlines and a lot of things that you have to do absolutely perfectly to make sure that all of your filings are clean with the, either the city board of elections or the state board of elections. And every year there's a lot of litigation over various aspects. And what's very exciting about it is that everything gets filed with the Board of Elections in say early April. And by the end of May, you've had your hearings at the trial court level. You've gone to the intermediary appeals, the appellate division here in New York, and then also to the ultimate court, the Court of Appeals in here in New York. And you do all that in like 45 days.
Okay.
So it's extremely intensive,
time sensitive
briefs. Yeah. Because they have to be on the ballot or not by the June primary.
So like, what part of your practice is that? Your firm's practice, would you say?
Like, what percentage of it?
Yeah. Like, do you do that as opposed to like personal injury?
Election law has a bit of a season. It starts getting going in February.
Gotcha.
People start thinking about running, and then the primary happens in June. That's when most of the work is here. Because New York City is so democratic, and most of the elections are won or lost at the primary. Then when you get to the general, there's some areas around here that are more evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, like in Staten Island, for example, who have might have some more. And now also with the pandemic and the absentee voting, there's a substantial absentee, ballot count for part of it, where the Board of Elections will count all the absentee votes and, people who voted from home. And, you need to be there to make sure that, they're not counting a ballot for your opponent when the person filled in, two candidates for that position, or, or the other side isn't trying to challenge your ballots for, superficial reasons or, improper reasons. But back to the litigation aspect of it, one of the things that we ran into last year was there was a candidate who had previously held office, and he was convicted of taking bribes and did a stint in jail. So our candidate wanted to challenge his candidacy because in New York, that makes you invalid, or makes your candidacy invalid, and you can't run for office if you've been convicted of a crime of dishonesty. But the government doesn't do that automatically. They need somebody to challenge the candidacy and receive a court order first. So, I was able to kind of second seat the argument at the Court of Appeals, prepare Stanley for his argument. And, we were successful in knocking that candidate off of the ballot.
Wow. That's unbelievable. That's how does somebody get into election law, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's kind of something that you need to fall into. I mean, I don't really see people coming out of law school and saying, I'm going to be the next great election law attorney.
I think it's a great niche. I mean, niche if that's something that you want to do. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I find it very interesting, very fast paced, very exciting. It's nerve wracking though, because you make a little mistake and you can, really seriously affect somebody's candidacy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got to be a perfectionist.
Really interesting though. So one thing that I really like that you said, which, I liked a lot of things that you said, William, let's be honest, but one thing that I thought was yeah, man, like one thing that I thought was pretty interesting, you said like some people aren't satisfied if they don't have like a person as a client. Some people have like companies so like tell us a little bit about that, your thought about having a person as a client versus having a company.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of the satisfaction that I get from my work is when a client is happy with what you did for them.
Right.
There's a lot of people who have issues that they can't solve themselves and they need an attorney for. I mean, personal injury is huge in that way, because the average person trying to put in a claim for payment for injuries that they sustained, they'll never get the compensation they deserve without an attorney. The insurance company will just, continue to lowball them and hope that they just take it or they go away. And then they'll increase their offers once an attorney's hired and they realize that, that person's serious, or somebody who, had a relative that passed away and they need to probate their estate, or, they don't know what they're supposed to do. And you're able to fix that problem for them.
Right.
And, I have a guy that former client, he kind of just calls me every once in a while and he's like, oh, I have this issue. Well, who do you think I should talk to for that? And, I'll talk to him for a little bit. And he's like, you guys are great. I tell everybody that, you really did right by me, and that if they ever need somebody, you're the people to go to. And that makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
And it adds a little bit of satisfaction to the job, that when you're having a bad day and you got something to do that you don't want to do, and you get a satisfied client or a happy client, it makes your day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like, where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years?
Oh, I hope to continue to build up our practice. I'd like to get a little bit more, a little bigger market share here in New York.
Good.
Maybe one day you'll be seeing me on buses instead of Salino and Barnes. Who knows?
Good. I like it.
But yeah, I mean, I'd like to hire some other attorneys. Get enough work so that I could lead a team.
So how many people are in your practice right now?
So we have the attorney that we co-counsel cases with, and then it's me and Ted for the attorneys, and then we have 2 paralegals.
Okay.
And we're able to handle the caseload that we have, but ideally from doing things like this and passing out enough pens, hopefully we'll have too much work than the 4 of us can do, and we'll have to expand our team.
That's great. So like, do you have any other advice for the Lawyer Stories community, or anything else that you would want to share with us?
I don't know if I have any advice.
Okay.
I don't know how qualified I am to be giving other attorneys advice, but
it's all right.
If anybody is thinking about small law firm practice and wants to give it a shot, I say go for it. And if you want to talk about anything, and you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to discuss it.
That's great, man.
Try to advise somebody else about how I kind of figured out what I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. You're on a great path. Congrats on all your success so far, and you're super
Thank you.
young.
I appreciate that.
So you got like a lot. You got a lot of time. You got a lot of great things to accomplish. So if you don't have anything else that you'd like to share with the community, I think we can sign off, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Bronx Attorney.
And thanks everybody for listening out there, wherever you are in the world today. Enjoy yourselves. Cheers.